Hi everyone, I'm Sunny from the Mortgage Force team in Edmonton.
Hi everybody, it's Dustin Wozniak with Dominion Lending Center's Mortgage Force in Edmonton. What do you want to talk about today?
I think we should talk about kind of the motivations a lot of people have when they're joining the industry. So maybe as to why they want to join or why you think they want to join. And then maybe we'll start talking. Actually, that's okay. I don't want to introduce all the topics up front. Yeah. But
okay, so motivations for joining the industry. Why would somebody want to become a mortgage broker, a mortgage agent in Alberta? What are some of the things that they'd be looking for? What do they hope to gain out of it? What drives you to entering that industry, possibly leaving another industry to get into this one, or starting completely new? You're new to the workforce and this is kind of the first path you want to take. What are those motivations?
Yeah.
So what are some of the motivations that you think people might have for entering the industry?
So I talk to a lot of people as they're getting into the industry, and kind of the common theme and a couple of reasons that they give me as to why they want to enter is going to be obviously the income, right? Because you're kind of programmed to think that real estate, is money, right?
Yeah.
Like real estate equals a lot of money and income. And then also they like the flexibility of the role, right? It provides that flexibility. It provides an opportunity to maybe spend more time with your family, things like that.
Well, let's back up and let's just digest the monetary side of it. Like money being a key driver for joining the industry. Do we, as existing mortgage brokers, think that that's a good option to enter the industry for? A good reasoning, a good motivation to enter the industry? Personally, I'd say money being a key driver is no, because I think you're going to be scared out of the industry soon if that's your key motivation. A lot of people don't realize that starting a new business, which is what you're doing as a mortgage broker, you're not making money right off the bat, right? With any new business, whether you're opening a store or anything like that, there's a lot of initial investment. And with this, it's not initial cash investment necessarily, but it'll be initial time investment where you're not really getting return on it. So you could find yourself in a situation where you're working for a long time with very little income or no income in some cases, and that could deter a lot of people that are driven by and motivated by the monetary side of things. They're going to be chased out of the industry relatively quick. So if that's your key driver, I think there needs to be other pieces to it to kind of support it, because alone, I don't think it's going to be enough. At least not instantly.
Yeah, and it does take a couple of years to kind of get to that level. And some people, it could take a little bit longer. But this is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not like you're a mortgage broker, you're licensed now, all of a sudden you're going to be printing cash, right? If anything, this is it's probably slow to be making a couple dollars, or it's going to be a little bit slow. Get rich slow scheme, right? That's essentially what it is. Like, it does take some time with any business. Like, again, you're essentially self-employed, right, from day one. So again, the difference is, you're offering a service, you're selling yourself, as opposed to like if you're opening a store, you're buying products, you're selling products. Again, you are that particular product. So it takes time to kind of build that brand and have people trust you, right? And I think a lot of people, when they're getting into the industry, I don't think it's justified, in terms of okay, I want to get into the industry because I want to make a lot of money. It just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I personally think money and income is a byproduct of doing the right thing, right? And a byproduct of that consistency over a couple of years. Again, not over 6 months, not even over a year. I think for the most part, the first year you're going to spend just learning, being a sponge, absorbing all the information coming your way, because there's a lot.
Yeah. So just expanding on that monetization and that being the key motivation for getting into the industry, I don't think it is, and maybe you can kind of give some more insight to this. I don't think it's beneficial to be doing this part-time, because again, it's like, imagine you're opening a store and you didn't have 100% attention to it, right? It's opening a new business and trying to not give it 100% of your attention. The time it's going to take for you to realize those initial costs, whether they're startup costs in terms of dollar or time, the time to get that return on your investment is going to be so much longer if you're doing it part-time. So if you're doing it part-time to try to supplement additional income from another stream, then it's going to be really difficult for you to kind of make it in this industry if that's your end goal. So
I think the reality about this particular industry is, especially when you're starting off, that's when you got to put in the most work, right? You almost have to put in more than a full-time effort into the industry. Trying to do this part-time, I just think in some circumstances, it may work, but for the most part, it's a full-time gig, right? And you're going to find yourself even putting in more hours, and unfortunately, in the beginning, you're not getting paid for it, right? So in the beginning, it's just a lot of work for free, or it's going to feel like it's a lot of work for free. Having a typical 9 to 5, trying to do this in the evening, I mean, that might be your goal. That might be something that you might be able to do, but the reality is, like, lenders aren't available after 5 o'clock, right? We as support systems for the team aren't available after 5 o'clock. Lawyers are not going to be answering their phone after 5. The realtors are out showing homes, right, after 5 o'clock. There's not a whole lot of business development. I mean, looking back at my personal experiences, a lot of the business development that's happened, it's been during the day, right? It's whether that's with lender partners or realtor partners or whoever, I'm trying to develop that relationship with. It's during the day, right? Because everybody's kind of, running on the same schedule.
During business time.
It's business time. It's called business time for a reason. I personally don't think, doing this part-time is really going to benefit anybody. I think if anything, you're going to find that you're going to just be dumping a lot of money into it, a lot of effort into it. It may not be a lot, but at least there's a lot of money, a lot of effort in that sense. Like, it's gonna feel like you're just spinning your tires, right?
So I guess we can transition kind of to the next motivation then, by from what you were initially talking about, being kind of work-life balance and managing kind of schedules on your own. If you're trying to do that in your evenings and weekends, you're trying to kind of contain certain times. Do you think that's a good motivation? You're coming into this industry saying, hey, I'm going to be able to build my own schedule. How much of that for motivation is going to be successful for developing a strong business?
So that free time, I think, will come later on, right? And that's kind of the reality. Is like, in the beginning, like, you need to find something to occupy your time. You need to pretend like this is a 9 to 5, right? You need to find things to do, because you're not going to have things to do. So you need to be working on your business. And later on, that's when I think you can kind of spend time spending, with the kids or on vacation. But in the beginning, man, it's difficult. You're not gonna. I mean, you have free time, but you're not gonna. It's not gonna be productive. You're not gonna be making any sort of income if that's your goal. You need to find things to do. Right, especially in the beginning.
Like you said, working on your business, right? And that's big. Like, a lot of people talk about, like, working on versus working in your business, right? The busier you get, the more you'll work within your business. Yeah. But to get to that point, you need to work on your business, so that downtime can't really exist.
Yeah. And I mean, like, so let's break that down a little bit more. What does working on your business mean in the mortgage industry, right?
Yeah, it's relationship building, I think, right? That's a huge part for me is relationship building. And I think a lot of people in the industry realize that there's huge value in establishing strong built relationships, whether that's with potential referral partners, whether that's with lenders. From our perspective, when you have a lender that you can lean on in a certain situation, whether you know exactly who's going to support you in a certain scenario, that relationship is going to be so valuable to delivering the best potential product to your client, which is yourself and that whole experience. So those relationships go deep, and you need to spend a lot of time establishing them. There's other parts of the business that you'll always need to work on, and that's kind of improving systems and processes and everything, and that's stuff that you can do relatively easily. It does take time, but it's relatively easy. The relationship building has to be a little bit more organic, takes a little longer, and is going to feel like more of an investment, I think.
Definitely. So, I think people also occupy their time in the beginning by overdeveloping processes, and that's kind of an excuse that you give yourself to not go out there and actually maybe have a meeting with people, or maybe not develop those relationships. It's like, oh, you think that you are being productive, but I think there's a level of kind of overdevelopment of those processes, and maybe overtraining yourself on certain policies when you know exactly where to look for that information, right? You don't need to necessarily memorize certain things. So you're 100% right. Working on your businesses, developing those relationships, and then also being a sponge, right? And you want to absorb as much information as possible at the same time, from various audiobooks and maybe resources just in general, right? I think just sales related, mortgage related content, even like economy related content, to just kind of figure out what's happening, and we need to be able to kind of tell something to our clients, so our clients look at us for that professional advice. And if we don't know what's happening around us, I don't think that's fair for our clients.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. Yeah, I agree. So what other kind of motivations would somebody have? I mean, obviously, like we kind of touched on it a little bit too just now, just being your own boss. I think that's something that attracts people. They say, well, I don't want to get somebody else rich, I want to get myself rich, right? Working for somebody else, you never really become self-sufficient. You're always just kind of doing something for somebody else, right? Whereas this, your motivation is, hey, every single ounce of blood, sweat, and tears I put into this is a direct result into my business and my ability to succeed. Personally, I think this is one of the most successful motivations to joining the industry, and to joining any industry really is knowing kind of what you want to get out of it, and knowing that that's not based off of some dollar amount, right? It's knowing that, hey, I'm putting energy in and I'm getting exactly that back out in some form, whatever it is, right? Whether, you have very established relationships, or you have, $100 million in volume, whatever it might be, there's that work that you put in to get it to that point. And I think that motivation is really valuable. And if that's a key driver, I think this is a very good industry for you to get into.
Yeah. One thing you gotta remember that is again, the results aren't gonna come instantly, right? Yeah. So it's the amount that the work that you put into it now, it's probably gonna pay dividends a couple of years down the road, right? Because again, I think the main reason why people become successful is, again, they give it a decent amount of time. They're consistent with their actions, because ultimately you're trying to develop trust within your clients and your referral partners, and then also they need to like you as well. Yeah. And personally, that's kind of what I think the two factors are. Trust is something that takes a long time to develop, right? And value is something that takes a long time to deliver. So I think you have to kind of work towards those two things in order to, have industry partners that will support you, which in turn will turn into, funded business and then income, right? So consistency over time, I think, is very important. With that concept of, hey, I want to be my own boss, I want to be, I want to be self-employed and self-sufficient and work for myself, is going to be also, you have to go in with the mentality that I'm going to be patient as well. Patience, I think, is a very important factor.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. So is there any other motivations? I think we touched on kind of the big ones. I personally can't think of any key drivers that's going to say, hey, I want to join into that industry. Usually it's monetary or one of the other pieces we kind of talked about. But anything else you can think of?
No, let's maybe talk about why people leave the industry. I think that's I'm kind of just
that's a big one. Yeah, 100%. So my first thing and my first thought for leaving the industry is just mismanaged expectations. So that's why I think us having this conversation today is so valuable, because I think there's so many expectations that are put in the wrong direction for this industry, right? So somebody, for example, Googles what's the average salary of a mortgage broker. Well, you know what? You're going to see some promising numbers. You're going to see, a number. I'm spitballing here, but maybe in the $70,000 to $120,000 range, right? There's probably going to be a big range at whatever site you're finding it on, but it's probably going to be in that range, right? And on that top end, that's probably still a little low for many strong producers, right? But the average, the reason it's an average is because there's a lot of people weighing down that number, right? There's a lot of people earning zero, right? So there's a lot of people coming to the industry, they realize it's a lot harder to earn what they thought they could earn, and so they're leaving. So that motivation of money is hey, that's maybe not as easily attained as I thought it was going to be, and so that's maybe a reason they leave. Perhaps support is a big one. Right? A lot of people will join the industry, and when they're trying to select a brokerage, which I think we should dive into a little bit as well too, and kind of how to select a appropriate brokerage that might be a good fit for you and interviewing brokers. But when they're picking one, they're trying to pick one that they think is going to help their business succeed without knowing exactly what their business needs to succeed. So having that support system available is going to be huge, and that's going to be a key driver, I think, for pushing people out of the industry, because they get in. And once they're in, it's limited barriers to entry. There's a couple courses they have to take and a couple fees they have to pay, and you're in. And now what? Right? So you got your license, you're at a brokerage, that you interview guys oh yeah, we're gonna give you a great split, yada yada, this and that. And all of a sudden you're like, hey man, how do I do this? And you're getting voicemail and your voicemail and no replies to emails. Where can I find this information? And you're struggling to kind of build those relationships that you need to be building, right? So that support just isn't there. And I think that's one of the main reasons we see people exit the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say lack of expectation. Again, they don't know what to expect going into the industry, and then lack of support, right? Lack of that training and support. So maybe that will lead us into our next topic of maybe how to select a good brokerage. What makes a good brokerage versus a bad brokerage? Is it the fees that they charge, for example?
Yeah, no, and you know what? When it comes to fees, majority of them are going to be the same, depending on what you're looking for, right? Some will charge a desk fee and things of that sort, which if you're being given a desk, why not pay a desk fee, right? You'd have to pay rent anywhere if you're having an office, so it makes sense to have that. If you don't need that, then obviously find a place that isn't going to charge that, right? There's options available. What I find is that people aren't necessarily aware exactly what they need, right? And it comes down to expectations again, like you were saying. I'm going to interview a brokerage and I'm expecting to come in and maybe have a 80-20 split. But you know what? Like, I know for that first six months to 2 years, I'm going to need a lot more support. So is my value there to be taking home 80% of that, right? And so the guy that's going to say, yeah, I'll give you an 80-20 split right off the bat, is not going to put the time into you to get that value out of you, right? They're going to expect you to kind of just deliver that volume right out of the gate, right? Whereas somebody that says, look, I'm going to be honest with you, we'll start you at 75-25, but I'm going to be here along with you and I'm going to offer you that support. So you know what, you're getting value for that additional 5%. Where's that value coming from? If there is a different split, why is there a different split? Is that different split just because, some mortgage broker is cocky and just wants to offer less, or some other guy just is being super generous? Whatever it may be, find out, write it down on paper, write down the pros and cons. Hey, this person did this, and this for me. I had a conversation with him. I liked this, and this about him. I didn't like this, and this about what he said. And you know what? It's going to take time to decide. It's not going to be a decision you just want to make on a whim, because it's something that's as easy as it is to switch. It's not, right? There's a lot of things that come with trying to switch, and you don't want to be doing that. And unfortunately, in our industry, we see a lot of turnover, especially within the first couple of years. They see a large turnover of mortgage agents from one to the next, and that's probably because they didn't interview them correctly. They didn't realize what they weren't getting from one, right? They realized what they were getting from someone, which was maybe a higher split, but they didn't realize what they weren't getting by getting that, right? So, and what do you need right off the bat, right? That's kind of what you need. Maybe down the road you can have negotiations with your existing broker, and I'm sure they're all going to be accommodating. If, hey, all of a sudden you started at a 75-25, but you're 2 years in, you handle your files for the most part on your own, you require much less of my attention, now we can try to change that split a little bit and make it a little bit more enticing for you, because you no longer need that same amount of support that you did from the beginning. So that change in what you're getting value from is there's a shift, right? Right.
Well, I think the biggest motivation for a team lead or a broker owner is getting the brokers to do business, right? So they're not really benefiting from a broker doing no business, right? So I think, again, like back to that 80-20, analogy that you made, it's like 80% of zero is still zero. Like, it doesn't, it's nothing. So I guess, like, in terms of that support, what does that mean for a new broker? Like, what, in your opinion, what is that support system? Like, what do you want? What kind of questions are you asking for a new broker?
So I want to be able to know where to go to get my information. That's going to be the most important thing for me. Personally, I love to do my own kind of research and investigation to find out the answers to my own problems. But that being said, I'd love to know that there's a helpline that, hey, if I'm struggling to find it, I call that helpline and I instantly have the support I need. So if I'm calling a brokerage and I'm trying to get that information from them, I want to make sure that, because everybody can say too that, oh yeah, we offer support, right? But you can get that kind of feeling from them by actually interviewing and having a conversation with them. Are they somebody that, maybe they didn't respond to you right away, or they take a couple days to get back to you, and it's like, how is that going to be now when I'm on your team, right? Is that going to suddenly change? So to me, I want to know that there's that helpline available. I want to know that, hey, here's resource A, B, C, and D. Go ahead and look into it however you need to. But if you need additional help, this is kind of the helpline. And that helpline doesn't necessarily need to be a direct line to anybody. It just needs to be someplace or somebody that I can talk to or go to find out that additional information. And that could be a list of contacts even. That could be a list of lender contacts that I maybe wouldn't have, like, there's no way of me knowing as a new agent, there's no way of me knowing who to reach out to with a particular lender unless I've already been kind of directed in that way already, right? So I think all of that stuff is extremely valuable in building that support. It's knowing where to look and who to look to.
Yeah, and really just like leveraging the relationships that your brokerage has already formed and made, I think is very important, because if they have the good relationships with lenders, they know exactly who to go to. Chances are, you're going to be able to get in there and form those relationships and reinforce them. There's already a little bit of a relationship there by you being a part of the brokerage that has a good relationship with that particular lender. So that is definitely very important. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the support system, right? I think also kind of that developed and formalized training program is very important. That's something that I wish I had when I first started. I didn't have a formalized training. I just had that helpline, right? Yeah. But the helpline wasn't very good. So what I say is like, I would like to get some training, and that's why we do that comprehensive training, is because people need to have a little bit of a foundation when it comes to policies and a little bit of an expectation kind of going into the industry.
Well, and you're entering the industry with no formal structure, right. So coming into a brokerage that has some kind of training structure that helps provide the structure for you to develop your business. So I think you nailed it at that point too.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what to you would be like a red flag if you're interviewing brokerages? Mm-hmm. What would be a red flag to you? Like, hey, like I don't think this is a fit for me.
Yeah, I think like over promising sometimes, right? Like kind of just putting those things we talked about earlier in the forefront, like money, for example. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's true. This industry does not have a ceiling, right? You can make as much money as you want. You can make as little amount of money as you want. But it's realistic, right? Again, this industry, like many others, follows that 80-20 rule, where 20% of the brokers do 80% of the volume, right? And it unfortunately does have that 50% turnover statistic, right? 50% of people will not renew their license after the second year. So that red flag, I think it's going back to overpromising. Oh yeah, you'll make $100,000 first year, for example. Second, you want to ask the question of, does the broker do their own deals? Right? And a lot of them have some sort of structure to do it, but do they have that structure in place? Right? Because I always say, like, if someone has the opportunity to be doing their own mortgage transaction from their own referral source, would they put that file aside to help somebody else out? Right? That maybe they don't have a connection to that referral source, or they're making quite a bit less. They're making, again, 80% less, right, in terms of compensation. So will they put that file away to help somebody else? So I think that's an important question, is there a formalized support system? And it doesn't have to be the broker owner that's helping you, right? But is there somebody in place?
Something set up,
somebody in place to be able to help in that situation. So that's one red flag. Second red flag, I think, is right out the gate offering a very aggressive split, because again, it's in my opinion delivering the value for the split. Yep. Right, it's delivering the value. It's not just promising the higher split. It's what are we getting for, like, what am I getting for my 30% or 25%, right? Because if there's a lot of value there, again, you shouldn't have a hard time, paying that extra percentage to the broker if they're able to kind of grow your business, right, and bring that value.
It's kind of like what we tell our clients, and we tell brokers about clients, right? If they'll leave you for a rate, if they'll come to you for a rate, if you're just selling rate, they'll come to you for a rate, they'll leave you for a rate, right? So I guess you can say the same thing about like mortgage brokers too, right? Like if they'll come to you because of a split difference of whatever it is, 5%, they're going to leave you for 5% as well too, regardless of kind of where else there might be value found somewhere in there. So.
But I think going back to kind of the concept that you were talking about before is people entering the industry, they don't really know what they're looking for, right? They think they want the most compensation, right? And then they realize, okay, there's nothing here for me. There's no training program. There is no formalized support system. And I do get a lot of people coming back, once they've had that conversation, whether it be 6 months, down the road, and maybe they join somebody else, and then they end up reaching out back. And I think that's the reason. I think it's because they realize, okay, and I like those types of brokers, because they've kind of seen both sides of it, right? So I feel like they appreciate that a little bit more.
They dip their toes in the water, and like, oh man, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. So now they actually know what they're getting into now.
I'd rather be in the hot tub, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What is your opinion on maybe like, working hard, playing hard as a brokerage?
Well, you know what? Obviously, you want to appreciate the people you work with, right? So at the end of the day, the people at the brokerage are the people you're going to interact with quite significantly with. So selling specifically that, again, I don't think that's where your business is going to get exponentially better with. but that is going to help you stay a little bit motivated maybe sometimes, right? So I do think there's something to be said about just office camaraderie and social events, things like that. They help lighten the spirit a little bit, and I do think there's value in offering those. And I think if there's somebody not offering it, it tells you like, hey, maybe this brokerage is just all about numbers, right? And that kind of could be a little bit of a red flag, because all of a sudden now, hey, maybe they're not about the relationships, right? And relationships is something that you and I just recently have talked about being so significantly strong, right? Relationships and work-life balance, like all that stuff, although it's going to be difficult for you immediately, it's something that you're going to want eventually, right? So setting that expectation right out the gate, I think, is important too, and knowing like there is options to have both, I think it is valuable. But when there's a key focus on, hey, like we all love to party, right? I think that's a pretty obvious red flag. It's like, hey, come join us because like we go to the bar every Friday. Well, like that's no reason for me to want to invest my entire business and my career on you, right? But if you're offering value outside of that, and that's an addition, I think there's something positive to be said about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, there definitely needs to be some sort of team building, I guess, reinforcing relationships. If I know somebody on a personal level, it's definitely a different interaction than if I've never met them before, for example, or I only see them on Zoom as a box on the screen.
Half the time, not even a camera turned on, right? So it's just like a silhouette of a person.
So I think it is important to participate in those types of activities that the brokerage actually tries very hard to throw and put on. I think there needs to be a level of play that comes along with working hard and just really just getting to know people on that team, in that brokerage, including lender partners, including the other brokers that are there on a personal level, right? And sometimes the difference between having a little bit of a fence up versus not is huge when it comes to let's say, for example, getting exceptions at a lender, or if somebody knows the answer to a question, maybe you can have that conversation and get those answers relatively quickly, because again, that particular person. So
it's not just a name popping up on a chat, right? It's, hey, this is so and so from the office. Like, oh yeah, I've dealt with the same issue before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give you a quick answer, right? So obviously having those relationships is important.
That human interaction is quite important. So.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about a lot of the motivation and everything. Like, so what are the actual steps? And obviously we've been through it, and you through a little bit more. What are the steps of getting licensed in Alberta, and what are some of the kind of barriers and costs associated with?
So I guess step one is the eligibility for licensing. So there's certain criteria that you have to hit in order to become licensed. And so you'd visit the RECA website, Real Estate Council of Alberta. I think it's just reca.ca. And there's going to be 2 courses that you need to do. So you do the first course, you write the first exam, you sign up for the second course, write the second exam. And obviously you have to pass both of them with a certain percentage. And after that, there is a criminal record check done and fingerprinting. So it's called the CCRC, which you need to obviously submit and pass. And then after that, you look for a brokerage. Right, so kind of you're asking those questions we just discussed as to what type of things you want out of a brokerage and what type of value a brokerage can provide you. But that's generally the process. Yeah. In terms of cost, you're looking at the last time I checked, it was about $1,500 per course. Again, that could vary because now RECA is offering a little slightly different program when it comes to course providers, but roughly about $1,500 per course. Every year, your licensing fees, they are anywhere. For the first year is going to be a little bit higher because you pay into an assurance fund, but after that, it's in the ballpark of about $500. Give or take, and then there's exam fees that you need to pay into too. So
when I did the course, both courses, I'll say, I think it took me combined about 3, maybe 3.5 months to kind of do both. I don't know about you, I don't know about others, but from what you hear, is that kind of like standard timeline, like 3.5, 4, 5 months, like where in that range is kind of should be expected? Because obviously, like, this is something that maybe if people are trying to leave an existing career, they're gonna have to plan a little bit before leaving, right? So you probably want to be starting this. So if you're already working full time, then when are you going to be doing the course, right? Are you going to be doing it in the evenings? You're going to start feeling less motivated and harder to focus. So you might be spending a little bit less time on it. So maybe it takes you a little bit longer. So
I think 3 to 4 months is expedited, to be honest. A lot of people think they can do it very quickly, but then life gets in the way, right? So I would realistically budget 6 months for the coursework, and then again, you're waiting to write the exam, you're waiting for the CCRC to come in. So I would budget 6 months, realistically. Right.
And that's good, because like I said, if somebody's already working, right, like you're not going to want to sit down and hammer out 4 or 5 hours of course material after a full day's work, right? That's just going to be unreasonable. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
Even as mortgage brokers, I don't want to sit there and do that course for another hour after, right? So some of that material can be dry, but there's definitely good information in there, and especially with some of the changes coming to RECA, I think there's going to be some exciting changes coming to the course providing. So hopefully things become a little bit more interesting and a little bit more relevant. And that can definitely benefit people's abilities to succeed in the industry afterwards too. So